The words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Please be seated. There was a column in the paper on Friday titled, "What We Lose by Hiring Someone to Pick Up Our Avocados for Us." The author, Genia Belafonte, talks about her experience over the last 3 to 5 years of starting her day by going to her neighborhood Starbucks shop and standing in line waiting for her skinny chai latte. And she said she really enjoyed this because she could count on a regular basis, running into people that she knew, whether it was the parent of another child in her child's class, or a neighbor that she hadn't seen in a little while, or somebody she used to work with. But she enjoyed these sort of informal, random interactions with folks. But she said in the last year or so, she's noticed that Starbucks seems to be focusing on the mobile to-go orders, where you kind of order what you want on your phone, and it's ready for you when you get to the store. And so now, and I've had this experience as well, she says she goes in and stands by herself waiting at the counter for someone to take her order, while a stream of people with their headphones on or talking on the phone come in, grab their drink, and dash right back out the door. She's missing, she says, that interaction, that kind of friendly interaction with the other folks in line. She also talks about this new phenomenon of Instacart. Maybe you've had this experience in Wegmans of being run over by these Instacart employees who are screwing around with their heads in the phone, buying other people's groceries. I think it's a wonderful service. I can imagine what a blessing it is for folks who are homebound, for folks who generally are too busy, and it is a gift to be able to have somebody else do that task for you. But Belafonte wonders if, again, we aren't missing out on the interactions, the kind of social interactions with those people that we would kind of come into contact with while doing our own grocery shopping. She talks about the work of sociologist Ray Oldenburg. And you may remember that Oldenburg talked about the 3 places where we spend our lives. He said that the first place was our home, where we're surrounded with people that we know, our family and our loved ones. And the second place he identified was our workplace, where we're surrounded by colleagues who we know pretty well, who we see on a regular basis. And then he talked about the importance of what he called the third place. And that was the shops, the churches, the community centers, the bowling alleys, all the places where we would have interactions with people who we didn't know very well. People who maybe didn't look like us. People from a different economic or social background. People whose life experience is very different than ours. And he thought that those interactions were very important. Belafonte's worry is that as we automate more and more things, we're having less of those social interactions. It's lowering our civic engagement, she worries. It's lowering our kind of just everyday civility because we're not meeting people on a regular basis who are different from us. It's increasing our isolation. She writes that we are losing a way to bridge differences in a world marked by social stratification. She may be a little overly concerned with it, but I found myself kind of interested by her words. She writes, the incursion of technology into every aspect of consumption has meant that only the indolent or pathologically tolerant wait for things. Now, none of us, of course, really love to stand in line. It's not something that we look forward to doing. It's not something that we look for opportunities to do. But the reality is that life is, to a large extent, all about waiting. We are always waiting for something. We're waiting for bits of news. Who is going to come out ahead in the Iowa caucuses tomorrow? We're waiting for a diagnosis. We go in and have a test, and then we find out that we won't get the lab results for a couple of weeks. We're waiting to see how life will progress, what life will bring us next. We're waiting to see what is next for our aging parents and grandparents, or for ourselves, how life is going to change, as it inevitably will. We're waiting, whether we realize it or not, for the unknown. The surprises, the unexpected things that happen in life that flip things upside down. Life is largely about waiting and how we choose to do that. Now, sometimes when I'm in line at Wegmans, I kind of struggle between how to wait. My temptation is to grab my phone and open up maybe the New York Times crossword puzzle app and try out a couple of clues. And then I remind myself, well, this is an opportunity to maybe strike up a conversation with someone I don't know, or at least to look around and people watch, or maybe just read the headlines of the tabloids on the magazine rack. There are opportunities, and that's a silly example of how one chooses to wait, but we have all kinds of opportunities in how we choose to wait day to day. Anna and Simeon, who we meet in the lesson that we heard from Luke's Gospel, have been waiting for a very long time, for decades, Luke tells us. Today is the feast of the presentation of Jesus in the temple. You may remember, if you grew up in the church, this day used to be called maybe the Purification, or in some churches called Candlemas, where the church would bring out candles that they were going to use in worship for the next year and bless them. It's 40 days after Christmas. This is the absolute end of the Christmas season, so if you have some random Christmas decorations still up, this afternoon is the day to go home and back away. In any case, the practice in Jesus' day was 40 days after you were born, your parents took you up to the temple to present you. And that is what Joseph and Mary do. And things go kind of as you'd expect. They offer their sacrifice. The priest probably said a blessing over Jesus. And as they turn to go, they have these interactions with two people who have been waiting for decades for just this event to happen. Luke tells us that Simeon is an upright guy, a righteous guy who's lived in Jerusalem, who was told a long time ago that he would not pass from this earth without laying eyes on the salvation of Israel, the person who would bring salvation to Israel and indeed salvation to the world. And when he sees Jesus, Simeon knows that has finally come to pass. He knows in his heart of hearts. He goes up to Joseph and Mary, and he tells them about what a blessing their child is going to be to the world. I imagine Joseph and Mary are still kind of swirling with that interaction, and as they are getting near the door, this old woman in her 80s, Anna, comes up, and she has been living in the temple for decades, fasting and praying. Her whole life has revolved around her life in the temple. And she comes up and recognizes who Jesus is going to be, and also tells his parents about him. Both of these people, having spent their lives waiting for this one incident, this opportunity to see the person of Jesus. So my question for all of us today is, what are we waiting for? What are you waiting for? What news are you hoping to hear? What change in your life are you hoping to see? What new thing are you hoping will happen? My question for us as a congregation on this day of our annual meeting is, what are we at St. Matthew's waiting for? What is the next thing that God has in store for us? And what are we called to do to bring it about? We have choices in how we wait. Some of us are good at waiting. We're patient. We're used to not knowing what comes next, and we're okay with that. Others of us, and I probably fall into the second category, are not so good at waiting. We're very impatient. We want to have things kind of wrapped up in a box to know what comes next. Whatever kind of waiter you are, I encourage you to think about what it is you're waiting for and how you're spending your time doing that waiting. And as a few minutes ago at the annual meeting, I asked us to begin to dream about where God is leading St. Matthew's into new areas of ministry. I encourage you to dream about your own lives and to dream about this congregation. And reflect on what you're waiting for and how we're doing that waiting. Amen. Amen.